Take 16. Is your life kinda complicated? Welcome to One Take, the podcast designed to seek wisdom to live simple, healthy, and happy. We'll get there one take at a time. I'm your host, Yezmin Thomas. Hi everyone, and welcome to One Take, the podcast designed to seek wisdom, information, and inspiration to simply live better. I am your host, Yezmin Thomas, and as usual, I thank you so much for joining me on Take 16. First of all, I would like to thank you for your patience. A lot has been going on in my life, and I needed to take a little break to get things organized. As you know, if you've been listening through this podcast journey, there's been some change in my life, and mainly after the decision that I made to leave my job as a television journalist and seek new opportunities, see what I was able to do on my own. And in reality, what I think I was mostly looking for was for the freedom to be able to express myself really on any topic through this platform and through my blog too. So that being said, I would like for you to know that I am expanding the scope of this podcast. As you may have noticed from the intro, I'll be sharing content, interviews, whatever I can get my hands on that gives us wisdom and that provides us with valuable information. Most importantly, that gives us the inspiration that we need to simply live better and happier. I'll be talking about many topics and interviewing many people. I'll be sharing from success stories like the one I've prepared for you today to information on personal finances. This is a topic that I really enjoy researching, reading, and writing on. So I am going to be doing a lot of the topics of personal finances, from living debt-free to not being defined by what we have. Because I really feel like we live in a society that defines who we are by the amount or the type of our possessions, by the car you drive, the shoes you wear, the look of your clothes, the brand of the purse you're wearing, and really not by the contributions that we make for the betterment of our society, of our peers, of our families. So I think it's important for me to continue pondering those topics because I think too much is said about everything that you need to buy to be happy, but little is said about how to create happiness within you. And for that, you don't need possessions and you don't need all these other things that then later on when you buy them and you didn't really have the money to pay them, then you end up being all worried because you're in debt. But we'll be getting into those topics later. I would like to welcome you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or really any podcast player or platform out there. If you have already, thank you so much. If you haven't, please do so. And also, I would like to ask you to help me spread the word out about the podcast. If you like it, if you like what I'm up to, if you like the topics, share this episode with a friend, a coworker, with your spouse, share it on your social media circles. Any way you can do this, it's going to support me a lot and it's going to get people to know what we're doing with this podcast. And it's also going to be able to provide new feedback about the topics that you guys want to listen to. What I want to do is create content that's worth listening to and that's making an impact, that's giving you inspiration, that's giving you useful information to live simply better. I also want to let you know that I've been working a lot on my blog. It's available at www.yezminthomas.com, and I'd like to invite you to visit it, check it out, and also subscribe. If you subscribe, you can receive the most recent posts straight to your inbox as soon as they're published. And the platform is going to reflect a lot of the changes that I've been doing to the podcast. So it's going to be a more cohesive experience. So make sure you check it out. With that being said, let's get into today's interview. You guys know that all my guests are very special for me. But today on the show, we have a super guest. This is a woman that faced huge challenges in her native country of Argentina. And she was given an opportunity to start from zero here in the United States. She's done it, and she's done it big time. She's an entrepreneur, a media personality, a 3-time Emmy winner, and just now became as well a published author. She is SuperLatina Gaby Natale. Welcome to the show, Gaby. Let's start from the beginning. You are from Argentina. What brings you to the United States, and how do you start over here?
So I came to the United States after spending over a year unemployed in Argentina. I graduated with a lot of joy, just like many recent graduates. Everybody who graduated in the year 2001 with a master's in journalism, and the timing was not the best because in Argentina in December of 2001 exploded a socio-political crisis that was one of the biggest in the history of the country. The unemployment was 21%. People lost not only their jobs, but also their savings because there was a financial crisis at the same time, and banks wouldn't give them their money from their own banking accounts. So the scenario was chaotic. The president left. It's called the Pink House in Argentina, the equivalent of the White House here in the United States, in a helicopter. He resigned earlier, and we had a period of chaos where we had 5 presidents in 10 days.
Wow.
So imagine the situation was very chaotic, and there I was, young and hopeful, with a willingness to report and to put to practice everything I've been learning for such a long time and to become a journalist. But the opportunities, unfortunately, were not there. And I remember I would stand at the entrance of radio stations and TV stations with my resume just to ambush people who were leaving the door and say, hey, I want an opportunity. You have a vacancy. How can I want to work for free. I don't care. When you spend a long time unemployed, all you want is to have a break, to have an opportunity. And that opportunity didn't come my way. It was very frustrating in the beginning, very depressing after some months. And I really started thinking that I didn't have anything to offer to the world, professionally and personally, that all this lack of interest in what I had to offer was a reflection of who I was as a professional, which is something that many people who go through unemployment tend to believe it's a mistake. But it happens to us, and it affects your self-esteem. So one day I was at home and I was unemployed, and I had a friend who had a real job, and she was working in a public relations firm and was coordinating a conference, an international conference. And she told me, Gaby, if you want to come, help us. I don't have money, I don't have a budget, but I do need some help. And I thought that help she needed was for me to work as a professional journalist, writing press releases or you name it. But all she needed was a helper. She needed somebody to greet people when they arrived. She needed somebody to move chairs around or hand out flyers. And because she was my friend, I said yes. But Yezmin, the minute I hung up, I started thinking that this circumstance was the proof that I was a total failure, because people who have graduated with me and got real jobs were going to attend there, and I was going to be their helper,
Wow.
being the helper of these people. And so I was having a pity party in my head, thinking that I was such a loser. And all of a sudden the phone rings again, and it's my mom, Cristina. And my mom really, she's a tough cookie, and she has had a life that was harder than mine. And so it's not easy to make Mama Cristina, convince her that you're a poor, that you're a poor Gaby. It's not easy to get a poor Gaby from Mama Cristina. So I told her my problem, and my mom said, you know what? I'm going to tell you what you're going to do tomorrow, Gabriela. Tomorrow, you're going to go to that job, even if it's an unpaid job, and you're going to work with your best attitude, pretend they're paying you $1 million per minute, because I'm going to tell you why. You never know when opportunity will knock on your door. And I don't know, my mom is not a fortune teller, it's a lawyer, but maybe she has some fortune telling. uh,
It's called wisdom.
yes, yes, virtues, I don't know. Because the following day, while I was doing my work as a helper and moving things around, my friend Maria, who invited me, told me, Gaby, I'm in a crisis here. The translator canceled last minute, and I have a delegation of professors that are coming from George Washington University, and I have nobody to translate. So could you please, please, please help me? So I dropped the chairs, I dropped the flyers, I dropped whatever helper activity I was doing, and I started translating to these professors. And long story short, these professors started sending me work via email first, then specific assignments. And when they had a vacancy in their public relations firm in Washington, D.C., I was the first one in their mind for that position, and they offered me the position. And in the course of 1 year and 2 months, I went from unemployed in Buenos Aires to public relations executive in Washington, D.C. So you never know really when opportunity will knock on your door.
Wow, Gaby. And that's really how destiny works. You never know. And like your mother said, show up, bring your best attitude, and the attitude is going to give you opportunities. So what happens next? You move to DC.
I moved to DC. I worked for about a year in DC, and we work with different clients from Latin America. One of the clients was a campaign for a governor in the state of Sonora. And what happened was that our candidate became the governor. With our campaign won. And so they sent me from Washington, D.C. to Sonora, Mexico, to open the office of this public relations firm and to work from Mexico. And it was fantastic because I got to see firsthand the life of norteños, the life and the way of being of the people who really is the majority of the Hispanic community, which is Mexicans, but specifically Mexicans from the northern states of Mexico. So I had to learn, what banda and banda max is, and the different brands and the food and the way of life, the albur, the way of joking people use. And that was an invaluable lesson for the work I had to do afterwards, which was serving the Hispanic community as a communicator. So you never know, as you say, destiny works in mysterious ways sometimes. So that experience in Mexico was fantastic. And also, it was very insightful because I got to see firsthand. Sonora is on the border with Arizona. So I started reporting and I got to see firsthand the reality of the border. So I got to see, those hard stories that we always see on the news. I was able to report on them, and I was able to see day in, day out what the realities are behind those stories. So it was on a human and a professional level, it was a very valuable experience. And what happened next was that I was freelancing, covering those stories at the same time that I was working as public relations professional. And those stories started airing in TV Azteca in Mexico, and then a Univision station in Texas, specifically in West Texas, saw my work, and they offered me a position as news anchor. And that's how I came back to the United States, and I started working in news as a news anchor for Univision in West Texas.
Wow, quite the jump from DC to Sonora to Texas.
Yes, so, exactly.
Was that when you were working for Univision? Was that when your SuperLatina concept started, or how was that born?
It started, but that TV station at the time was not interested in putting SuperLatina in the air. And so at the same time, what happened was that I was doing all my green card paperwork, because my green card took like 4 years, 5 years to get it done. And there were a lot of setbacks We had to refile like 3 times. So in the moment where we finally got our green card approved, my husband and I, my husband is a journalist too. My husband and I, we both sat and had a very serious conversation. What do we really want to do now? Because before we had a visa that was a work visa, so we only were allowed to work for a particular employer.
You were limited.
I was limited. And so now that we had the green card, it was the very first moment since I left Argentina in the year 2003. So it was the first time in 5 years where we could really sit down and think like, what do we really want now? And we come such a long way from Argentina, and we've moved so much because at the same time, my husband in the beginning was living in London, and he lived in London for 1 year and 1 month doing a scholarship. So we had long distance relationship and then long distance marriage because we got married in the middle. So there were so many sacrifices that we were doing for this dream. So we said, what we really want. What we want to do is, at the time I was seeing Tyra Banks, Martha Stewart, Oprah, Christina Saraleghi, so many fantastic women who were involved not only in delivering and communicating on camera, but also being involved in the editorial decisions, the commercial decisions, the copyright of those shows. And I said, you know what? I would like to start a show I can actually have control over, because I don't know, Yezmin, you're a journalist, so you probably understand when I say that sometimes you fall in love with a story, and when you have a news director or somebody who says this is not newsworthy, your heart breaks.
Exactly. I've been there.
And those stories sometimes are never told, and you have it in you, like, what would have happened if I was able to tell this story or this other story? And I understand that the job of the news director is to keep an editorial line of what's relevant for a certain channel or station or radio. But at the same time, we as journalists sometimes fall in love with stories or have a different vision of what is worth showing or what is worth sharing. And I didn't want it to beg for approvals from anybody to tell a story. And that's why I started SuperLatina.
You know, Gaby, something that amazes me that you just mentioned, that you were not afraid to dream big. You wanted to be like Oprah, like Martha Stewart. You were not thinking small, you were thinking huge. This is something...
Well, those were my inspirations. I'm not saying I have the same bank account as Oprah, but they were my inspirations.
But no, I wasn't going there. What I mean is that you were looking at the ones making it big. Sometimes some of us, we feel intimidated to think big, but you didn't have that fear.
Because I think that if you have to learn and you have to model people in the beginning, because of course, if you're going to model somebody, you have to think about who is at the peak of excellence in whatever you want to do. If you want to run, see how somebody who's won the gold medal is running and what is his or her training. So I believe that if you want to aim for excellence, you're gonna study and you're gonna observe, how other people that you admire are doing it, and maybe then create your own recipe and your own sauce and your own flavor of how this is gonna work for you. But if somebody else has already learned so much and has already experimented so much and has created something that resonates, that is very valuable. You cannot start something like, I'm going to invent everything from scratch. I'm going to reinvent the wheel. If you see somebody who is doing something of value and you can do it in your own way, why not?
Amazing. I love that. That's a great quote. And so you start dreaming, you guys think, okay, we want to do this show, SuperLatina. How did you come up with the name, the concept of it?
SuperLatina, I wanted a name that could be pronounced by people who spoke English and Spanish, who would be catchy, easy to understand, and also who would carry the message that for me is so important, that inside of us, there's a sacred space, an inner part that is very powerful. It's like an inner superhero. You can call it your sacred self. You can call it your inner superhero, but that's what your super Latina or super Latino is. And we all have it inside of us, Latino or not. So we all have that higher self. And that's what I wanted to appeal to, our higher self that lives inside of us. And so that's how I chose the name. But the thing is, we decided to do the show, but we didn't have any money. We didn't have any financing. We didn't have any TV station who would be interested in doing it. What I did is I quit my news anchor position, and everybody was telling me that you're crazy. How are you going to quit a job that so many people want and apply, and it's so hard to get for something that is so, unsure. We don't know if this show will ever, come to life. And so what I did is I started teaching communications in 3 different universities. I became a professor so that I could have some financial stability while this crazy at the time project started to take shape.
So it was like your side gig.
Exactly. In the beginning, it was. So I started teaching in 3 universities. My husband is a producer in a newscast. So we have 2 jobs that will basically pay the bills, and we start building Super Latina, and we start teaching it. And there's this meeting that we have with one of the local programming people from Midland, Odessa. He was an American general manager who met with us, and Yezmin, at the time, I didn't know you needed a pilot program or that you needed something to show. I went there with a PowerPoint and a smile, and my eagerness to show this man that we really wanted to do something. And I don't know till this day what he saw in us, but I'm just so thankful. He saw something that made him say, yes, let's give it a try. But here's the thing. He said, yes, let's give it a try. But Gaby, I want to tell you something. The studio it's called CBS, the station where this was taped in the beginning. The studio we have in CBS and all the sister stations is booked all day because we do the newscast from here, and our community program is done from here. We don't have a time for you to come and tape here. But I do have a different option, he said. And I said, what is that option? He said, the owner of this station is also the owner of the mall. The Music City Mall is the name of the mall. And we don't have a commercial space available there, but I want you to keep an open mind because we do have a carpet warehouse that we're not using right now. And you could record your television show from the carpet warehouse. And my husband and I looked at each other and we were stunned because we never thought that such a non-traditional way of doing television would come our way. But even at that day, Yezmin, we knew that having a TV show that was produced from a carpet warehouse was immensely better than having no TV show at all.
Oh, yeah.
So we said yes. And we started planning this TV show that would be taped at the carpet warehouse, but we didn't have cameras or microphones or tripods or a TV set or anything that you need to create a TV show. So we started asking for bank loans, and we thought that the easiest part, we were very naive, we thought that the easiest part would be to get that first loan because we already had a yes from a TV station. But it turns out that because we were immigrants, our credit history was very short and no bank would give us the loan that we needed. We needed $20,000 to buy everything for that, to launch the show.
Wow.
And so for everybody who's willing to start a business, please knock on the doors of the Small Business Administration. It's for free. It's an incredible organization that will guide you. And they said, go to a credit union. Don't go to banks. Go to a credit union. They're mission-driven. And that's how we got our first loan. And that was the piece of advice that changed everything. Because without that piece of advice, we wouldn't have been able to get the funding we needed to buy simple things like a camera or a microphone.
So they give you the loan and then you buy your equipment and you start.
Exactly. And 6 months after, we got canceled.
Why?
So we got canceled because the owner of the mall and the owner of the TV station wanted to use that carpet warehouse as a commercial space. So he remodeled that for a commercial space. And so when they told us that the show was going to be canceled, we started looking for an alternative channel, and we found an alternative channel. We started airing in Telemundo. And in that market, until this day, we are in Telemundo in that market, because in different markets, we have different partners.
Of course.
And so that was a lesson, you plan, but nothing is set in stone. Things can change, and you have to be flexible. And one thing that is very important is not to freeze and not to panic, because you need to respond fast when emergencies like this happen so that you're still on the air.
Wow. So fast forward, how many years?
So we started the show in the year 2007, so 10 years ago. We moved to Dallas in the year 2009. Manuel Abud, which was the general manager of Telemundo at the time, we did a presentation for him, and he said, yes, I want this show in my lineup. So he gave us a very important opportunity, which was the opportunity to air in one of the top markets of the USA. So things started to change radically for us when we got this opportunity. And so we were able to access better talent, better interviews, more exposure, better sponsorships. And then what happened was that we started thinking about expanding to different cities. And it took a long, long time. But in the year 2014, we got a call from BEME, which is PBS in Spanish, and they decided to pick up the show for national syndication. And so it airs from coast to coast of the United States and in Puerto Rico as well.
That's amazing. That makes you a national brand.
Thank you. And one of the things that was one of the most important things for that to happen was that we early on, the beginning of SuperLatina, we started to pay attention to social media. We started to upload our shows to YouTube, and not because we were visionaries, but because I wanted my mom-in-law, and my dad to watch the show.
And they're in Argentina?
Yes. So I started uploading the shows, and social media, this was in the year 2007 when we started. This YouTube channel started taking a life of its own, and it started to, people started watching what we were uploading, and people who were not living in West Texas or in Texas or sometimes even in the US. So when the moment came to negotiate with PBS in Spanish, we could literally document and show them that the content we produced was enjoyed by people from different cities, from different backgrounds. And that was one of the key things why they said yes, because we could show we had 40 million views in our YouTube channel.
Wow. It's so important that you mentioned that, because social media and YouTube and all these channels available through internet, they really become in business like part of your real estate. You can really use that to leverage negotiations. Like you just said, hey, listen, I have so many million followers or so many hundreds of thousands followers on social media. I have a big impact, and this is proof of that. And that gives you legitimacy to be able to negotiate better income sources for your business.
Exactly, because it's very hard to document and demonstrate that you are producing something people want if you don't have the numbers to back it. So if you have the numbers, you can talk to, it could be TV stations, it could be publishing houses. Like now I have a book coming out, it's called El Círculo Virtuoso. And I know during the negotiations, because every single publishing house and every single TV network now, first thing they're going to do is check on your social footprint. And they're going to figure out, okay, if I invest in giving exposure to this TV show or to this book or to this idea, what are the chances that I am going to reach people? What are the chances that this investment is going to come back to me? So that's why even if you work for a corporation or if you work for somebody else, always cultivate your own social media, always cultivate your own brand, because you never know when that following or when that tribe, it doesn't have to be millions, you can have your tribe to amplify whatever you're doing, is going to come handy. Nowadays, nobody has job security anymore. So it's great that you work for somebody else or some other organization, as long as you don't forget that you have to work for yourself first.
I love that. That's great advice. So, just to show off, because we have to, you've been nominated multiple times, not only to regional Emmy Awards, but national Emmy Awards. You've won several of them. What does that mean to you, Gaby, to stand on that stage among the most famous and influential people in the United States, television influencers, and you become one of them? What was that moment like?
It was kind of an out of body experience in a way, because because first the nomination, before I said that, I want to say that people now, because I won 3 national Emmys, think that Emmys rain on me, and I want to say that I spent 7 years participating in regional competitions without winning. So that's not when you see a reel or the highlights of people's careers, you always see the wins, but you don't see when they participate and they don't win.
Exactly.
So I just want to give you a heads up that prior to this reign of national Emmys, there were a drop of 7 years of participating and having my behind, in the chair. When they say the winner is, my behind was always glued to the chair. but things change. And you were asking me, how is this moment? If you see the videos, you can tell I'm always the most surprised person in the room, because in our categories, we were nominated with players that have so much more resources, funds, manpower. We were competing with CNN in Español, CNN in Spanish, and with Univision last year and this year, and we won 3 awards.
Wow.
So really, to be recognized like that by your own peers, and having, only a small fraction of the resources and manpower that those other shows, have, and to be able not to be nominated, but also to win, it's very moving, because it makes you feel like all these sacrifices, 10 years of sacrifices, were worth it, and that we have a commitment of creating content that really is going to raise consciousness, portray Latinos in a positive way, and will avoid stereotypes. I don't want to be the cute girl that is dancing in a mini skirt and reading tweets. I don't want Latinas to be portrayed as fire pit only, or just to be like, we're here and all we do is, wear a sombrero and eat tacos. That's not what SuperLatina is about. So, and we've done a show where we're mission driven, and that's what moves me so much. The fact that with a smaller footprint and a smaller platform, because we're mission driven, this has touched people's hearts.
Exactly. And let me go back and circle on the fact that you had been doing this for 7 years and you had multiple nominations. That's something so important that you mentioned. It reminds me of my career. I've received 21 nominations, and I'm fortunate to have received 11 awards, but it was 10. Imagine, it was after the 7th nomination as well that I won my first one. And I remember submitting that story. It was about girls, boxing girls here in Fort Worth. And I remember telling my husband, if this story doesn't win an Emmy, I don't have it. I just don't know what it takes to win one. And turns out it did win. And I knew, when I did the story and I poured my heart into it, I knew what it took. I knew how much better that story was and how hard I had worked on it. I went really far to these tournaments on a weekend, this and that. I mean, I went out of my way to get the best video for my story. And it finally won. And I was like, okay, now this is what it takes. I knew within my own skills how high you needed to push yourself to be able to get there. And I think it's so important that you mentioned that, because some people think it's easy and some people think that they're entitled to winning because they work for such company or because they're part of a team. But it's really hard. And that's why I wanted to show off your awards, because you really deserve them. And I appreciate your humbleness, but I want people to know that's a huge deal.
Thank you. But also, even when we do, because I like you, spent 7 years, with my behind closed glued to the chair when they said the names. Also, just mean it's a learning experience, because just as when you lose and you get a nomination, which is truly an honor. It's hard to get a nomination too, but also we have to be conscious that when you don't win, you are not a failure, and when you lose, you're no better than anybody else. I believe that of course it's better to win than to lose, but if we also define our worth as a professional because of I lost or I won, etc., it's gonna start wearing on us.
Definitely.
Because as you said, that story that you made, if it hadn't had won, it would have still be a wonderful story. And the award is given in a comparison, or in a way where you have other stories around, and you cannot control which other stories are going to be around also.
Exactly. But it does give you reassurance. But I don't think as journalists we ever work for the awards. I think people who do that, they're not really true journalists. Those come as the cherry on the top, but the core of what we do, getting people informed, getting the stories out there, that's really what our job's about.
I agree.
So you are a businesswoman, you have children, you work with your spouse. How is that? Is that hard? How have you managed all this?
Well, I enjoyed a lot working with my husband. I'm not sure my husband would say the same about me. Because some days I can be a little bit intense, he's more cool. But I enjoy it, because when you put so much effort and so much time into something, and you can share it with your significant other, then it allows you to share other things, like you enjoy trips together, which are business trips, or you enjoy experiences together, or those little stories and little things that happen while you're working and you share with your coworkers. I love that I get to share it with coworkers, but also with my husband. Also because I have a terrible memory, so I need somebody to be there to remember afterwards.
Yes, you said that, honey.
Exactly. So I love it. At the same time, of course, on the downside, all your work problems come home, and all your home problems go to work. So you need to be aware that those boundaries that sometimes you have when you are working in a certain, company, and then you come back home and your husband or your significant other is not involved in your work, those issues are not there. Now everything is going to be mixed up, but I like it that way.
That's awesome. Now, tell me about your book. How did that happen? Did you always dream about writing a book, or how did you come up with the idea? And now you're about to publish here in a couple months.
Yes, it's going to come out on July 25th. It's called El Círculo Virtuoso. In English, it's the virtuous means the virtuous circle. And it started with a simple question. Just mean, I've been interviewing people who are at the top of their field, true champions of their industries and their fields for a decade now. So if I interviewed a musician, it was because he or she won the Emmy or the Grammy. If I interviewed an athlete, it was maybe because he's a boxer and won the world championship, and so on. If it's an author, he or she's a bestseller. So one day I sat down and thought, what do my guests have in common? Because they come from they have different professions, nationalities, ages, philosophies of life, everything. But all of them have something in common. They have reached the top of their field. So can I find an invisible link that unites all of them? Some patterns in thought, some patterns in habits, something that I can identify unites them in spite of their differences. Yes, I was able to find many things that were this invisible thread that united them. And then, can I create a system, a step-by-step system where we can learn, the things that they've done right? Because I believe that excellence is not something that you're born with, or commitment, or all those qualities that I've seen in these amazing people are not necessarily something that you can only be born with. These are many skills that can be learned. And that's what El Círculo Virtuoso is about. It's a circle with 7 archetypes or 7 faces that all of these people have nurtured inside of them. It's the dreamer, the possibility to visualize. It's the architect, the possibility to plan. It's the maker, it's the execution. So it's the apprentice, the ability to perfect your craft. It's the warrior, the possibility to persevere. The champion, when you achieve what you want to achieve. And then the leader, which is when you inspire and give back to your community. So those are 7 archetypes that live inside all of us. We all have the possibility to dream, to plan, to execute, to excel at what we do. It's just that we have to recognize in which stage we are, which are our strongest archetypes. For example, I know I'm good at being an architect and planning, but when things don't go my way, I disconnect with my inner dreamer because it's very hard for me to imagine things will turn around. I have to push a little bit harder for that. But then I know I'm a good warrior. I persevere. That's something that comes natural to me. So with El Círculo Virtuoso, the virtuous circle, the idea is to be self-aware of yourself, your own skills, but also to learn these different phases that all of these people have gone through and that have given them spectacular results.
I love it. I can't wait for it to come out. And it is already available for pre-order, right?
It's available for pre-order in Amazon, El Círculo Virtuoso by Gaby Natale. And you can have it, a paperback or Kindle. I think the Kindle version is maybe $5 or something like that, which is fantastic about digital books.
Exactly. Very affordable. And we are going to link all these resources and a link to your book in the notes for the web, the podcast episode on the web as well. Well, Gaby, it's been a pleasure having you on air with us. Anything you like to tell us to close? Perhaps give us some inspiration, some words of advice for people who like you, we came here with a dream, with the intention of making an impact, specifically in the Hispanic community. Tell us something to inspire us when we're facing hurdles, when we're having a hard time, when we're thinking, maybe we can't do it. How do you do it? Because you went through all of that.
The number one thing that I found out writing the book and going through my own life too, that stops us to unlock our potential is that we make permanent conclusions about ourselves, our potential, and who we are based on temporary circumstances. For example, in my case, the temporary circumstance was unemployment. Unemployment is not something that is, a nice circumstance of life, but it's never permanent. You go into, and eventually you're going to find a job. It's temporary. And I made a permanent conclusion that I probably was not going to be able to work in the media field because I looked for so many jobs and found no job in Argentina. And then I said, well, maybe I'm going to have to rethink my career and, work somewhere else, find another industry. And time proved That's something that I felt at the time was impossible. To have my own show, to work on camera, was within my reach. But my problem was that I made a permanent conclusion. I will never be able to work on camera. I will never be able to work on media based on a temporary circumstance, which is unemployment. So many times we make permanent conclusions about our possibilities and about ourselves based on temporary circumstances. Don't do that. Be wiser than me.
Those are words of wisdom. Well, Gaby, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for making this interview happen, for making the room for it in your busy agenda. I know you're traveling a lot. You're busy with the launch of your book. And I want you to know that I really appreciate. I think it's very important to get your story out to my audience because they can really relate to what you're saying, what you're doing, your book. So I really appreciate you, Gaby. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. Thank you for creating this space, Yezmin. We need more stories. We need more spaces to share stories, and we need more stories of Latinos out there because we don't have enough, and we don't have enough representation. So I thank you so much for the invitation, for this space, and I invite you and everybody to stay in touch. You can find me on social media, Gaby Natale, GabyNatale, and also GabyNatale.com and elcirculovirtuoso.com. Let's stay in touch y nos vemos en la próxima. Un besito. ¡Mua!
Thank you, Gaby. Thank you so much for your time. And for all of you guys, make sure to visit my blog at www.yezminthomas.com for the show notes. There's going to be a link to Gaby's contact information and social media circles, as well as information regarding her book, which, depending on the time that you're listening to this podcast, her book is coming out at the end of July of 2017. So it might already be out and you might be able to get it. Before we go, I would like to ask you guys for a huge favor. Would you please consider leaving a written review and a rating for the show on iTunes? Sharing your impressions helps in getting the word out about the show, and it also gives new listeners an opportunity to learn more about the show and the value that it can bring to their lives. Also, don't forget to connect with me on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, anywhere. You can find me as Yezmin Thomas. The easiest way to go and find me is to go straight to my website, yezminthomas.com, and then you're going to find there's some links to subscribe to. Thank you for your time, guys. Until the next time, remember, just keep it simple.